Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, December 2. I'm Giovanni Dennis with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching online at onespotmedia.com. 3 of the 9 members of the Uchen's Wilson gang who were convicted in October have been sentenced to a total of 18 years in prison. Chief Justice Brian Sykes is handing down the sentences in the Home Circuit Court. Odine Smith was sentenced to 4 years. Lanworth G. Hagan, whose role was to drive members of the gang to locations to carry out robberies, was sentenced to 6 years. Darren Taylor, who also played the role of a driver, has been sent to prison for 8 years. The sentencing hearing continues. 13 Jamaicans who arrived in the island this morning after they were deported from the United Kingdom amid strong campaigns and legal attempts to stop the controversial flight. The group landed at the Norman Manley International Airport between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. The Jamaicans, all males, are being housed at the Olympia Crown Hotel on Mullines Road in Kingston. Senior Policy Director of Crime Prevention and Community Safety in the Ministry of National Security, Renee Steele, told our news centre that the men will be held at the facility for the next 2 days. She says health and security screenings are underway. That process should be completed early this afternoon. In the meantime, Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says the deportees who arrived in Jamaica this morning will pose minimal risk to the public. He says they are being tested for COVID-19. The men will remain in quarantine for 14 days.
They'll be held for the period of time to get the results of the test, 48 hours approximately. And then depending on the results of the test, assuming that those tests are negative, they are going to be required to quarantine at home for the 14 days, which is not what we would normally require of our nationals coming into Jamaica. So testing, holding, and then after the results of the tests, then they'll be sent home for quarantine at home.
Dr. Tufton says the deportees will be strictly monitored during the 14-day quarantine.
If they have the virus on arrival, then it will show up in the tests that are done. Beyond that, though, if the virus is mutating and developing but not showing up, then they are going to be subjected to the 14-day quarantine. I mean, we will monitor, and I'm sure the Ministry of National Security will monitor the quarantine period. And so unless somebody breaches that and was infected, the risk will be minimal.
And at least 10 Jamaicans were granted last-minute reprieve after the Home Office acknowledged they may be victims of modern slavery. They were taken off the flight hours before it was due to leave for Jamaica following legal intervention. According to Britain's independent newspaper, in one case, a 30-year-old man who went to the UK aged 11 had his deportation cancelled Tuesday after the Home Office was forced to acknowledge that he had indicators of being trafficked by county lines gangs in his 20s. Some of the Jamaicans were also taken off the flight because they have children in the UK. Jamaica's COVID-19 case count has increased to 10,864. 54 new cases were confirmed on Tuesday. Their ages range from 3 to 94 years. Meanwhile, the country's death toll remains at 258. There's a call this afternoon for the government to change the way it makes withdrawals from the National Housing Trust (NHT). The recommendation comes following yesterday's tabling of a bill by the country's finance minister, which will allow the government to take $57 billion from the NHT over the next 5 years. O'Shane Masters has the details.
The change in mechanism for withdrawals from the Housing Trust comes from Executive Director of the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, CAPRI, Dr. Damien King. He is proposing that the government reduce the monthly contribution paid by employees or employers to the NHT and combine it with income tax so that the government has direct access. Dr. King argues that the current method is less efficient and speaks to a broader issue of the need to improve economic performance.
What they do is they get the money anyway by way of these $11.4 billion transfers every single year for 7 years now and 5 years more. So the money ends up with the government but has to go through the National Housing Trust. What is the reason for this circuitous way for the government to get money from workers? There's no good explanation for it other than the NHT is a sacred cow. It's a politically sacred cow, and it seems that no administration is willing to do anything that looks like reducing its power and influence and resources. Because clearly, if the government is going to end up with the money, it's better for it to tax people directly than to have the NHT tax them and then get it from NHT.
Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark told Parliament that the proposal is aimed at cushioning the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, Dr. King, who was speaking on Radio Jamaica's Beyond the Headlines on Tuesday, says in principle there is no major issue with the government gaining access to NHT funds for emergency situations such as the COVID-19 pandemic.
Because any earmarked funding is bad budgeting. All the funds that the government forces people to give up should go into a general coffer so that the government can go through the process of weighing off possible expenditures on equal terms and applying it where it has the greatest need. In which case, in the middle of a pandemic, the greatest need is not going to be building houses. The greatest need is going to be supporting the economy during the pandemic. This is why earmarked funding is a bad idea.
O'Shane Masters, TVJ News.
2 men were shot and killed and another is on the run after police intercepted robbers on Waltham Park Road, St. Andrew this morning. It's reported that about 4:30, residents woke up to sustained gunfire between police and gunmen. When the shooting subsided, 2 of the robbers were discovered suffering from gunshot wounds. A third suspect escaped. TVJ News understands that the gunmen broke into a store after cutting the grill. Police responded and challenged the gunmen and a firefight ensued. The store owner said they took several items and an undetermined amount of cash. And it's now time for a break here on the Midday News. Please stay with us. We'll have more stories when we return. Welcome back, and we're continuing the news. Aspiring mayor of the Portmore municipality, Markland Edwards, is backing the government's decision to transform the Sunshine City into Jamaica's 15th parish. Mr. Edwards insists the move is best for the citizens. Herman Green reports.
The city is about to change.
That's prediction from aspiring mayor of Portmore, Markland Edwards. Mr. Edwards says if the Jamaica Labour Party wins the local government election, which may not happen until 2022, Portmore will definitely become Jamaica's 15th parish. A month ago, local government minister Desmond McKenzie announced the establishment of a special select committee of the House of Representatives to examine a motion to this effect. The committee is chaired by South Central St. Catherine Member of Parliament, Dr. Andrew Wheatley. However, there was outcry from the opposition about the city's readiness to become a parish.
Our government has said it will take Portmore to be the 15th parish. And the holes of the protests from other side have already started. But let us tell them one thing. Back in the day when Jamaica became independent, they said we weren't ready for it. No, we weren't ready for it because certain things weren't in place. But we achieved a whole lot, and we can say, to God be the glory, great things he had done. Tell you something further. The other day, when our party leader, the most honorable Andrew Holness, called the general election, can I tell you, they weren't ready for it either. And that is the reason we came out 49-14.
Mr. Edwards insists Portmore needs to be a parish to make life easier for the residents. He argues the move could help to build stronger communities and businesses in the Sunshine City.
We need a smart city. We need a smart parish, one that utilizes information, communication technologies, which is to meet the demands of the citizens. At the heart of this transition and the development of a smart parish, we must know that we're going to use technology to help and to improve the lives and the experience of every resident in Portmore.
Herman Green, TVJ News.
Still on politics, the youth took centre stage on Monday as the 11th sitting of the National Youth Parliament convened. The young people rose to tackle national issues and to put forward solutions which they hope the government will consider. Sashali Hamilton reports.
This cohort of youth parliamentarians came with a Pegasus and AC Marriott level of quality.
They say the youth shall lead. On Monday, 25 young people shared in their own words recommendations on national issues.
We are proposing education on wheels, a new device that's not a tablet or a computer, but simply a van or a vehicle. Education on wheels will target the most rural of communities. It's a collaborative effort with the Youth Innovation Centers, and it's putting the Community Blackboard Initiative on the national scale.
We have struggled with trying to move the chalk and talk into the digital space, but given our challenges, that is not the answer, Madam Speaker.
The challenges faced by those with disabilities in the new learning paradigm, particularly the deaf, were also highlighted.
Madam Speaker, we see evidence of this with the educational programs that are broadcast during the COVID period. We are visual learners, and yet even the visual medium, such as television, do not make provision for the deaf community.
The junior MPs also voiced concerns about mental health, youth unemployment, and agriculture. This 11th cohort of youth parliamentarians began their journey a year ago, being chosen from more than 100 applicants representing all 63 constituencies.
And expected to execute a county project and a constituency project. And then bam, the COVID-19 pandemic arrived on our shores.
The recommendations made in Monday's sitting will form position papers to be presented to the government by the Youth Advisory Council. Sasha Lee Hamilton, TVJ News.
The educational opportunities on offer at the Ria Cobra Juvenile Correctional Center have increased. This after the construction of a new classroom block at the facility. Over 40 young men between ages 12 and 17 housed at the facility are to begin using the new classroom in January. Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of National Security, Matthew Samuda, toured the facility recently. He says the Correctional Department wants to build on the performances of the wards in recent exams.
CXC passes, certainly from our adult and young wards, should make the country satisfied. Now, it's by all means nowhere near a perfect system, and we want to expand the access and the interest in the educational programs. But we can't deny that it's moving in the right direction. Something that we're quite proud of, which is a new classroom block that will be ready to go in the first week of January. So students, the boys here will be able to ensure that their classroom experience is significantly improved in January, and that's a big ticket item for us as we continue to push the rehabilitation element of our focus.
And here's a preview of what's coming up in this evening's Health Report.
In the next edition of the Health Report, we look at flu, COVID-19 and dengue.
Wearing a mask, practicing hand sanitization, and keeping your physical distance. That also will help in terms of cutting down the number of cases of influenza that we see. In terms of mosquito and dengue, we know that what we have to do. Look out for the mosquito breeding sites, eliminate those as much as we can. We have to do that, and we have to use our particular mosquito repellents and so on.
That's the Health Report this evening in Primetime News. And now for today's healthy living tip. Wash your hands. Maintain a healthy lifestyle. Stay hydrated. Don't share food or drink. Keep your distance. Clean surfaces and get vaccinated.
To news overseas now, the UK has become the first country in the world to approve the Pfizer-BioNTech coronavirus vaccine. This paves the way for mass vaccination. Britain's medicines regulator says the vaccine, which offers up to 95% protection against COVID-19, is safe to be rolled out. Now, the first 800,000 doses will be available in the UK from next week. Elderly people in care homes and care home staff are top of the priority list. They are followed by over 80s and health and care staff. And the US-based Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is planning a change to the COVID-19 guidelines, among them a shorter quarantine period. Now, currently the quarantine period stipulated is 14 days. More from the CNN.
People who come in contact with someone infected with COVID-19 may soon be spending less time in quarantine.
I think this is a smart move, and it will help us.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is expected to trim COVID-19 quarantine recommendations from 14 days to 7 to 10 days after exposure. Dr. Robert Redfield, the head of the CDC, informed the White House's coronavirus task force of the plan Tuesday. Two senior administration officials tell CNN.
When the 14-day quarantine was set up, it was very early into the pandemic, when we had less information.
Officials described the decision as data-driven and said it has been under review for weeks. Health experts have said most people are infectious within a week of exposure.
If one is following someone for 7 days versus 14, and then particularly if you have a negative test, that really is likely to have a much more positive impact than people who say, well, I can't do 14 days.
An Operation Warp Speed document obtained by CNN estimates the first deliveries of drug maker Pfizer's vaccine could be on December 15th. Health officials stress that people still need to wear masks, wash their hands, and keep social distance.
People just want to be done with this, but it doesn't take a break just because we're tired of it.
News in sports now. West Indies Test captain Jason Holder has once again reaffirmed his belief in the Caribbean side's ability to challenge New Zealand in their two-test series, which bowls off later today. The touring West Indians have not won a test in New Zealand since 1995, but Holder says given what he has seen, especially from the batsmen during their two warm-up games, that drought could come to an end.
Cricket is played on a day. We've really beaten a lot of top sides in the last couple of years as well too, and I think this side has been building, heading in the right direction. So for me, this tour is really important. The last time we came here, I think we were pretty much outplayed, but it's pretty much the same guys that we've had, for the last couple of years. So a lot of these guys are familiar with the conditions now, and would like to make amends for the last time's performance. So more or less, I think we stand a really good chance, but we just need to be disciplined and execute our plans.
And Craig Butler has labelled as unfounded allegations of physical abuse as raised by his son, national under-23 footballer Kyle Butler. Responding via a press release issued by his attorney Christopher Townsend Tuesday, the elder Butler, who is the owner and the president of the Phoenix Football Academy, stated categorically that, quote, "I have not been abusive to my son on that date or any other date." The senior Butler, who said that his heart goes out to his son as he battles with some major issues, continued, quote, "I'm cognizant of the many issues Kyle has gotten himself in and things that my profession and principles would never allow me to be a part of. This has created a major problem in our relationship, as I have stated that this is not the path any parent would hope for their child." Butler, who also guided the reggae boy Leon Bailey to stardom, asked that the public allows his family the privacy to work through the matter. Over the last 48 hours, Kyle has posted photographs on his verified Twitter account showing bruises and cuts, citing physical and mental abuse. And that's the Midday News. I'm Giovanni Dennis. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, good afternoon.